All right, so I am going to lead off with my absolute favorite feature, and it is a feature that I've hoped would come to Photoshop for quite a while now. So I'm ecstatic that it's finally here. It's up in the filter menu, and if you scroll down, you'll see that we have Camera Raw as a filter. All right, and I have to kind of explain this, especially if you're not a huge Camera Raw user yet, because Camera Raw works on JPEGs or RAW files. Here's the deal: I think Camera Raw is the future, whether it's in Lightroom or whether it's in Photoshop. When I open up Camera Raw, okay, and we take a look through this dialog box, we've got exposure, we've got contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, clarity, which doesn't exist in Photoshop, by the way, vibrance, saturation, we've got curves, we've got sharpening, we've got hue, saturation, and luminance, we've got the ability to tint the highlights and the shadows, we've got vignettes, we've got all these different things inside of Camera Raw. Do you know how many dialog boxes it would take to go through white balance, all these different things? All these things exist, or almost all these things exist in the Photoshop interface, but they exist in different dialog boxes. You'd have to open up like 11 different dialog boxes to do what we could do here inside of Camera Raw. So for me, all of my editing gets done inside of Camera Raw. Photoshop's where I go when I need to remove a blemish or get rid of a telephone wire, or make a selection, put some text in, something very specific. But brightening and darkening and contrast and color, that's all done in Camera Raw. Okay, that is the feature. And so to be able to have that available at any point, not to close the photo and then go back into it and lose all my changes here and all that stuff. So it's to me, that's a huge feature as far as photographers go. Let's see here. Let's actually go into the Camera Raw interface here, and I'll show you some. So that's feature number one. To me, feature number two is I'm going to have to go, and this is a very, very close second. In fact, I'm going to open up a different photo for feature number two. Feature number two, let's go ahead and open up this photo. Feature number two would be this little retouching brush that we have here inside of Camera Raw. Okay, it's the spot removal brush, but the spot removal brush is now a brush that's not just circles, because what we used to have to do is we could just click and put a circle down, and that's all we could do is just click and put a circle down. And it was great at removing circles, at removing spots, hence the name of the brush, but it wasn't very good at removing like telephone wires and things like that. Well, now it's an actual brush, so I can adjust the size of the brush with the right and left bracket keys, and if I wanted to, I could come in here and get rid of, let's say, that. I could even make my brush a little bit smaller here, and I could go through here and get rid of that telephone wire. All right, so you get the idea here. I'm not gonna, it's painstaking to try to do this and do the video at the same time, but you can see it just removes all the telephone wire, all these little things, blemishes, whatever, gone. All right? And if you ever want to adjust one, like here, it's a kind of a little smudgy, all you gotta do is just move it. Just change it, and then you see it says heal, and that's an important distinction here. Heal is going to do a blur. It's going to blend between what I'm trying to fix and what I'm working on over here. But if you change it to clone, well, clone will use an exact duplicate. So then I can position this and totally get rid of it without having to worry about anything. So you could do cloning and healing right inside of Camera Raw. It's not just circle anymore. It's an actual brush. All right, so let's cancel out of that one. Let's take a look at another new feature. So that was feature number two. Feature number three for photographers here is we've always had this vignette, and I use it quite a bit, and I have used it quite a bit. One of the things that it will always bug me about it is I always darken the edges, right? And it's a great way to draw focus in toward the center here. And I always darken the edges. The problem is if you look at the preview, see how it starts to darken her head? And what it's doing is it's assuming your subject is right in the center of the photo. Okay. As photographers, sometimes we don't put the subject in the center of the photo, especially people. Landscapes, a lot of times you can get away with it. With people, though, chances are we're putting people kind of up here or over here. And what happens is it starts to darken their heads and their faces. So instead of using the vignette, what you can do now is use something called the Radial Filter. The Radial Filter works just like the adjustment brush. Works just like the graduated filter. Same exact settings over here on the right, except it does it with a circular gradient. So what I would do here is bring my exposure down and then just drag and just draw a circle, hence the term radial. and I just draw the circle, and I can make it more like an ellipse if I want to. All right. And then I can control after the fact. It's basically like putting a little spotlight on whatever you want to put on inside the photo. It's exactly what it turns out to be. And you can even turn the overlay off so you don't have to see that circle. But here's the preview. That's before, that's after. It's just a great way to draw focus in onto a very specific part of your photo. The more you spread it out, the more it feathers at the edges here. So if it looks like too harsh of a transition, I can spread that out a little bit more. Okay, so that's before, that's after. Great new tool. Saves me from having to possibly go into Photoshop and do it with a brush or do some workarounds here inside of Lightroom. Moving on, so that's feature number 3. Feature number 4. Let's take a look at this photo here, and this happens quite a bit if you're shooting anything wide angle, tall buildings, cityscapes, whatever it happens to be. Architecture is lens perspective problems. Okay, you can see all these buildings here are kind of leaning inward. So what we can do here is we can go to our lens corrections panel, go under the manual section. It's called upright. And what it'll do is it'll automatically analyze your photo. I'm just going to click auto, although there's some other options in here that you can go in there and fix. I'm just going to click auto, but I mean, check it out. Take a look. That's before, that's after. So automatically went in there, analyzed the photo, and got everything to stand upright, hence the name of the tool here. Now, it does have some areas because it is having to crop and move things around in the images. So it does have some areas that became transparent. So what we do here is we go to our crop tool, and all I do is come constrain to image, and then just click and drag, and we can come over here, and we can adjust. Just like that. And that way we crop the extra stuff out. And that's why I always tell people, if you're shooting wide angle and you're shooting architecture and cities and tall buildings and things like that, things where you know the buildings are going to lean in because you're going to have lens perspective problems, shoot a little bit loose, shoot wider than you have to, knowing that if you're going to try to correct those things, you're going to lose some of that area on the sides here. So it's just a given. If you shoot for it ahead of time, you won't lose anything important. That's feature number 4. Feature number 5 is it's pretty cool too. So let's take a look here. If you look at this photo, there's a feature called, it allows you to remove, if you go under the filter menu down to sharpen, shake reduction. It's meant to help eliminate camera shake. So here's the deal with this feature. It's not for blurry photos. It's not for photos where the person moved and you had a slow shutter speed and they're blurry. You know, you're taking a picture of a football player and your shutter speed was too slow and it's too slow and you didn't freeze the action and you want to make a sharp photo. It's not for that. It's for camera shake. It's for something where the camera moved. All right. In this example here, I was on the beach. And what happened is you can see the water's flowing up to where I was standing, and I had my tripod in the ground. Well, what happens is the water flows up around the tripod, and the sand that the tripod's on starts to collapse, or just because the water sinks into it, your tripod starts to move a little bit. So you can kind of see there's a little bit of ghosting right along the edges of the rocks here, and that's from the tripod moving. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the filter menu, go down to sharpen, shake reduction. And the first thing you do is take this little dot and put it over something that has the shake that basically something that an area that you want it to look for to fix. And I will tell you, it's not the fastest feature in the world. It's pretty cool when you see it working. It's not the fastest feature in the world, so be prepared to wait for it a little bit. But hey, it's great technology. Anyway, so we're in here, and I mean, I haven't even tweaked the settings yet, but just take a look at the preview. Okay, we'll back out a little bit and you can see it. That's before, that's after. See the blurriness right up here? That's before, that's after. And then you've got settings in here like smoothing, which will help go in there and smooth some of those edges if there happens to be any haloing or a little glow or a little edge that goes around there. You can start to adjust your smoothing and your artifact suppression settings to go in and to fine tune whatever happens to look like for your specific image. So amazing technology. Adobe's been kind of sneak peeked that one a long time ago, and it's finally made its way over into Photoshop. All right, so there you have it, 5 top features for photographers inside of the newest version of Photoshop. My name is Matt Kliskowski. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you again very soon.